This is the Witcher podcast on TV Podcast Industries, back for our final look at The Witcher Season 3 with Episode 7, Out of the Fire into the Frying Pan, and Episode 8, The Cost of Chaos.
Oh, I've been walking the wrong way all night. I will not die here. I will not die here. I will not die here!
Welcome back, fellow witches, to TV Podcast Industries. We're on to our final part of our chats all about The Witcher Season 3, talking about this time Episode 7, Out of the Fire into the Frying Pan, and Episode 8, The Cost of Chaos. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow witches, fellow parched witches. I am one of your other hosts, John.
Absolutely,
Yes, trudging through the desert.
It's feeling very thirsty.
Yeah, I kind of felt that. Yeah. Certainly when Ciri came across the kind of gloop pool, which I was like going, yeah, that doesn't look very, very quenching.
Yeah, but I think you'd be dying for it after a few days in the desert, though, wouldn't you?
She almost did, given it was actually the...
Spoilers! This is our spoiler-filled discussion about Episode 7 of The Witcher. Make sure you've watched the episode before John jumps into what happens at the end of the episode. We are going to talk about the last two episodes, of course, and if you've been joining us for all of our Witcher coverage, we're not going to spoil Episode 8 as we discuss the first episode of these, but we'll jump right into our discussion about Episode 7 in just a moment. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast over on tvpodcastindustries.com. You can also pop on over there to send us any feedback that you may have on the show itself, or you can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries to leave any thoughts that you may have on any of the episodes of The Witcher. This is the final part of our Witcher coverage, as I mentioned already. We will be back hopefully in the future talking about more Witcher, as Season 4 has been confirmed, and also a spin-off that we will talk about later on in the episode. Even though it hasn't been officially announced, there is another spin-off coming from the Witcher universe, which we will talk about later on, I think.
Excellent. Excellent. Because Blood Origins, I really enjoyed.
We did really enjoy that, despite the really low ratings on
I know,
IMDb.
it's weird.
And really low ratings for this season of The Witcher, actually, on IMDb again. This show is being torn apart, even though it gets great viewership, clearly, because otherwise Netflix wouldn't continually renew it.
Yeah.
It gets really, really harsh ratings by people over on IMDb.
Well, yes. Never trust IMDb. Probably Rotten Tomatoes to some extent, although now they do split that up between official reviews sort of in magazines and newspapers, as well as then the audience review.
Yeah, I always find the best way to judge whether you're going to like a show if you haven't watched it, follow a reviewer that you like and who knows and likes the things you like.
Yes, and then
see their opinion, and then obviously watch it for yourself. But
exactly.
But I would never take an aggregated score as someone's opinion that will match up my opinion, I would say.
No.
And hopefully, of course, that's why you're joining us on TV Podcast Industries, because we know that's what you like. We like what you like, and we talk about the things you like, hopefully.
Exactly, yes. With that, let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion of Episode 7, Out of the Fire into the Frying Pan.
I keep switching that in my head.
I know.
Yeah.
Derek, what are some of the sort of sizzling details of this episode?
Well, the show, of course, is based on the book series by Andrzej Sapkowski and on the game series from CD Projekt Red. Showrunner for the show, of course, is Lauren Schmidt-Hissrich, showrunner for all seasons of the show. This episode was directed by Bola Ogun. It's done loads and loads of TV, including 2 episodes of Shadow and Bone, John.
Oh, lovely stuff.
Yeah, and an episode of Lucifer as well.
Excellent. Yeah. Never really kind of finished through Lucifer, but adore Shadow and Bone.
Yeah, I think because Lucifer is based on the Neil Gaiman version of the character, I was expecting a really different show, and it started out as a kind of a crime drama with Lucifer at the centre of it. Not as close to the character I've read from the Neil Gaiman comics, so I kind of dropped off it quite quickly because it felt like a normal police procedural with a slight
it was kind
twist.
Of from the Lucifer comic series, which kind of, I think, carried on from what Neil Gaiman did there.
Yeah.
By Mike Carey and Chris Weston. And that group of writers and artists involved with that series.
Yeah, I think that's that's where they got the basic starting point. But again, it was a bit of a police procedural for the first year. And I know it was a very successful show. Lots of big fans of it. Eventually revived on Netflix and it has now finished as a series, but just didn't get into it with those first couple of episodes. I probably should go back and see it again because I like all the actors involved.
Absolutely.
So, that should be quite cool. But Bolo Gunn did direct an episode of that on one of your favourite shows, Shadow and Bone, John.
Yes.
Directed 2 episodes of that. This episode was written by Matthew D'Ambrosio. We've mentioned Matthew multiple times. He was a staff writer throughout season 2, wrote season 2, episode 6 of The Witcher, and he's also an executive story editor for this season 3.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us what they gave us, John, with your synopsis for The Witcher season 3, the penultimate episode, episode 7, Out of the Fire into the Frying Pan?
Sure. Following the explosion at Tor Lara, Ciri is transported through a portal from the monolith, finding herself in the wasteland of the Korath desert. At Aretuza, Jaskier finds and confronts Prince Radovid about his attempt to capture Ciri for Redania, but provides him with an escape route to get back home. The prince vows to return with whatever army he can muster to help, but the bard doesn't believe him. Jaskier also reunites with Yennefer, who informs him that Ciri is missing and Geralt has been taken to Brokilon by Triss. Jaskier travels to Brokilon Forest, where dryads led by Queen Eithné take care of the wounded Geralt, and he learns that the forest has become a refuge for people escaping the war between the Northern Kingdoms and Nilfgaard. Back in the Korath desert, Ciri struggles to find water or food, but she encounters a unicorn she names Little Horse, who keeps her company. Wandering the desert for days, Ciri is tormented by visions of her loved ones, including her mother Pavetta and Calanthe, as well as a mysterious figure revealed to be Falca, a half-elven princess burnt at the stake for rising up against her father, the king. When an unnamed desert monster attacks Ciri and wounds Little Horse, Ciri is persuaded by the vision of Falca to use dangerous fire magic to heal the unicorn. As she does, a violent, fiery vision nearly consumes her before Ciri relinquishes her magic and loses consciousness, waking up surrounded by bounty hunters. Back in Brokilon Forest, Jaskier finds a slowly recovering Geralt, where he informs him of rumours that Ciri has been captured and is on her way to Nilfgaard. They're taking young Ciri to Nilfgaard. Nilfgaard.
Yes, they are. Yes, that's the rumours.
That is the rumours.
Yep. A very desert-focused episode and a very Ciri-focused episode.
Yes.
This time. Yeah.
I think in some ways it was important to do to really get Ciri's perspective because it's such an ensemble cast.
Yeah.
It also just has to tread that really tricky pathway though as well, because certainly for me the last 2 episodes, both 5 and 6, were such a great roller coaster ride. Absolutely loved them. Loads going on, lots of storylines actually coming to almost a closure really in terms of the intrigue and the mystery. And so in a sense this is opening up a new chapter really, or a new start to the continuing storyline. It's kind of that next chapter in the story. So it kind of has a difficult path to tread, because I think, when I first watched this, my immediate reaction was just, it was a real change of pace.
Yes.
It felt very different, and I was kind of still wanting that kinetic energy that came from the previous 2 episodes. And so it was like, oh no, you're just kind of a little bit out of sorts with it. But having watched it the second time, I kind of appreciated it much better, to be honest. Yeah. And I think it's one of those stories that was required, because ultimately Ciri is this hugely important person that is being hunted and chased across the continent.
Yeah, and protected and cared for as well.
Yeah, and schemed against, and you name it.
Exactly. She is the central character, really, of the story, and everything else that's happening around is happening because she exists on the continent, right? So that's kind of where it is. So yeah, taking a pause here really to look at things from Ciri's perspective, or give her some time all on her own. Will we talk about our big moments from the episode, John? Do you want to kick us off with your big moment? Because I think we start there, really.
Yes, I think so. Big moment or big...
Entire episode,
yes.
I thought it would be.
It is Ciri in the desert. Because I think, as I said, this is really important to kind of understand Ciri, and I think to actually see her coming to terms with who she is, what she does, primarily through the vision that is Falca, but even the other visions that come to her, from Pavetta, who's her mother, and her criticisms, to almost another trial from Calanthe, who was the queen on Cintrea, the Cintrean throne.
Yeah, her grandmother.
Her grandmother.
Yeah.
And each time, they're really critiquing Ciri, who she is, what she stands for. Almost, Ciri even says, these visions are urging her to kill herself.
Yeah.
But, like with Calanthe, you have, people are using you for their own agendas. She then follows up with, what have you done? Nothing. Hidden yourself away. And, you used to be called the lion cub of Cintra. It's pathetic. And she questions Ciri, do you really think someone like you can change things where others have failed? And at each point, Ciri is having to defend her vision, in a sense, or her feelings towards what she would do, which is she wants to change things. She wants, she has to retort to their questions, their criticisms. She wants there to be peace between the elves and humans. There's not the dichotomy of hating one or the other.
Exactly. Wipe them all out.
Trying to bring them together. And so at each stage, she's having to reinforce, in effect, her tome, her ideology that she brings to this powerful and unique position that Falca then, wraps up in this ball to say, like herself, she was someone who was seen as a troublesome woman, ideas above her station, wanted to change things, but everyone else trying to prevent her or control her, manipulate her at each stage. And the same with, Pavetta, talking about being abandoned, and Calanthe talking to her that she's failed. And in a sense, this desert experience for Ciri is biblical of Jesus in the desert, the 40 days and 40 nights, all these trials, not just the visions, but the trial of heat, exhaustion, thirst, all this. And
you certainly get that across a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I do find this kind of stuff really difficult to balance in a show like The Witcher, this fantasy show where magic exists and where people have had visions and, visions have guided people for their entire life. The bonding of Geralt and Ciri itself was from a magical process almost.
Yeah.
And here with Ciri, it's kind of hard to extricate, are these visions? Or is this Ciri talking to herself through the voices of people that she's known in her past, her mother saying to her and challenging her and who she is and her defending herself? Early on in that experience in the desert, she's shouting at the sky going, I will not die here. I will fight through. And it's almost like the rest of the conversations, or it is to me, the rest of the conversations that she's having is her justifying who she is, her vision, her approach versus the experiences that she's had in the past. She's not really having a conversation with someone that's come back from the dead or anything like that. It is the conversation going on in her mind.
Exactly.
Justifying who she is, going down to this final battle, let's say, with verbal battle with Falca, where she has to make a decision between, does she embrace fire magic? Does she embrace the evil magic? Or does she give it all up effectively, to progress on her path? That's almost what I was seeing with the conversation.
I think fire magic in and of itself is not evil. I think it is difficult. Because we have seen Stregobor use it, we've seen Yennefer use fire magic.
We have. And one a character who almost lost her soul because she used it, and another character who is a reprehensible character.
we have that warning, the use of fire magic, as Yennefer tells Ciri, takes something from you. And to me, this is kind of that continuation of the trainings being done by Yennefer on the magic, but also the training done by Geralt as a fighter and a swordsperson, because not only are these psychological trials with the visions and, as you say, the justification in her own mind, this sort of toing and froing the battle of where she is in her own head through Pavetta and through Calanthe, as well as Falca to some extent, although I see Falca for good or for bad as more of a guiding, in the sense of I had this power as well. This is how I chose to use this. I mean, she even says in the end, she carved her ears into points because it was easier to be what they accused me of being, which was an elf, than that fight. So I just became elf-like.
Right.
So it feels like she's more guiding, you know, and there is this kind of side of it. But even to that point, it's where, as you say, she gets her to embrace the fire magic to save Little Horse. And then as she's taken by it into the darkness and it begins to consume her. And, you know, there's all these conflicting visions of people who she must get revenge on, like Vilgefortz, Cahir, and so on. But also that even your allies need to be punished for effectively using you in this larger game on the continent, and that includes Yennefer and Jaskier and Geralt, and that's when she says, "No, I renounce this power.
I renounce all." All the magic power, effectively. And I suppose the conversation starting out with herself and her mother, of course, someone that she didn't know very well and would like to prove herself and like her mother to be proud of her. Then going on to her grandmother, who she thought at the beginning of the show, when we meet her first, she believes her grandmother is the greatest ruler, you know, of the continent, that she rules with an iron fist, and that she doesn't put up with any badness. She has a good relationship with her grandmother, and now, after everything she's learned, she's challenging back to her grandmother in this conversation between the two of them, where it's actually her grandmother saying to Ciri, "What makes you the important one that will lead us? I had to make tough choices. You couldn't possibly make those kind of tough choices." And it's her, again, justifying that decision she's made to lead the continent. I think there's some really good things about these scenes.
Absolutely. And I mean, even just within Ciri, you know, wandering the desert, effectively going around in circles at points, chasing footprints or hoof prints ultimately. But, you know, she is determined and resilient. There is that inner resilience and determination of her. And, you know, I really like the fact that I will not die here. You know, she keeps going. She gets the eggs to eat something and to get some liquid. She takes one of the lizards, eats it, but unfortunately it's poisonous. But I like that. I also really love the fact that all the way through this, there's a hell of a lot of bad language coming from Ciri. I just like that, because I think if I was in that position, I would just be swearing my head off all the time. And I kind of like that. It wasn't this pure trial. It felt sort of really down, dirty, tough, and Ciri responds in that way. And who wouldn't, after, you know, she's been in the company of Geralt and Yennefer for that length of time.
I think Gavin said that she's obviously learned from her time with Geralt, when the first thing she says when she arrives in the desert is, "What the F is going on?" You know, like we left her last episode, at the end of episode 6, with this explosion in Tor Lara. We didn't know that whether she got out of it. We assumed she had, of course, because we'd seen inside where she's interacting with the monolith. I definitely suspected, though, that we were going to be on a different plane of existence. Not that she was going to be put on another part of the continent. I thought it was going to have some connection with the Wild Hunt, that she was going to be back in that realm.
I thought the same, actually. I thought it was going to be taking her across time and space and not just space, effectively. Although the time of it, we're not entirely sure of either at this moment, because the other side of this is, you know, I was going, was Vilgefortz here? You know, has he perished in that explosion? Because it's not like he suddenly followed her through the portal. And indeed, the cloaked figure that came and went, that ultimately ended up being Falca. I thought potentially was going to be Vilgefortz, and you get the nice little sort of open meaning of Ciri waking up after she's gone unconscious, after renouncing the fire magic, with the bounty hunters saying she's the one he wants, leaving it quite open. And because we hadn't seen Vilgefortz, I was going, maybe it's him, and, time has passed substantially, or the other side of it is Emir. Exactly. Emperor Emir.
Exactly, in Nilfgaard. So, it was an interesting way to end it, because it ended with just those couple of seconds of her waking up with them looking down on her. But it got me going, did any of this happen at all in the desert? Was she transported there through the monolith and landed in the desert and had her 40 days, 40 nights, or was she knocked out and these three guys just came upon her after she's had this wild experience all in her mind, I just wasn't sure afterwards whether they just met her right on the edge of the desert, because the perspective that you see is three guys looking directly down on her on the ground, right? You're not seeing the vast desert behind them and them walking through the desert. So
that's true. And of course it could be that as well. And it could mean, is this a different plane of existence? Because we don't know.
Oh, well, that too. Yeah, I just assumed that she came back to herself with them staring down over her, woke up with them staring down over her, but I wasn't sure whether that whole piece had actually taken place. It doesn't really matter, because figuratively it has.
Yes,
Ciri's had those battles in her mind. She's made her decisions. Whether it actually happened in the desert or not, I don't know.
No, exactly. That's it. It's happened either consciously or subconsciously.
Yeah.
These events. And again, because of the close-up of both the men looking down at her and Ciri, I mean, we could talk about it later, but even in the following episodes, there's not much context as to her location in time or space either. So, I mean, that is still a bit up in the air, to be honest.
Exactly.
As well. So, it's a big part of it. It takes up a huge chunk of the episode. And I think on first viewing, you kind of go, oh, this just feels like it's suddenly come screeching to a halt compared to the previous two. But in the end, I kind of pretty much enjoyed this episode for giving, Ciri her front and center moment in terms of figuring it out for herself, because she's getting lots of advice from Geralt, from Yennefer. There are other people wanting to give, advice to her. Like when she exploded the monolith, you could hear Vilgefortz crying out to give her advice to stop, effectively. So she's always been given advice, and this was the moment for her to come to terms with everything as to how she is dealing with it.
Exactly.
So I like that.
Exactly. And there's people all across the continent who are trying to grab her and bring her to their place to make them the most powerful place on the continent, So yeah, that is the benefit of this episode, that it gives her a moment to put everybody else out of her mind and make those decisions for herself, whatever way she goes through that. So yeah, good stuff.
Derek, what about yourself?
Well, that is the majority of the episode, really, is Ciri. So I've actually called my big moment, Jaskier ties the room together, because he kind of goes place to place, connecting with everybody and gathering the story together, as he is a bard. He's a good storyteller. So he's able to pull everything together across, what's going on the continent. So he arrives in the aftermath of Aretuza, and I do love the shot because we see things still smoking, in Aretuza as he goes, through the ruins trying to find Geralt and Yennefer, and potentially Ciri. But who he does find is Prince Radovid, who they had a pretty bad ending, the last time they were together. Radovid saying, that he thought he'd never see Jaskier again, and Jaskier kind of going, yeah, that was the plan. I never wanted to see you again. But I like that he sets up his escape route for Radovid to get him back to Redania. And it's not self-serving. He's not doing it for anything other than Radovid is in a really tough position here. He will die if he's left behind on his own, since all his guards are gone. So, since Jaskier has the route available to him, he'll set it up so that Radovid can get back to Redania.
Yeah, there might actually be a glimmer of hope for this relationship, which you called, actually. I do like the fact that Radovid, even though he does kind of say, I'll come back and help you. Jaskier doesn't want that, but Radovid kind of persists here, saying, I want to prove to you that I'm more than a mask.
Exactly.
Which was the passing terms from the previous episode of the two, that, I thought there was something behind the mask, but there wasn't.
Exactly.
So there is a bit of a glimmer of hope here.
Exactly.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, like Radovid is basically proclaiming that he's going to bring back his own army to help them out. He's going to be on Jaskier's side. But as you say, Jaskier doesn't give him the opportunity to do that. He's saying, I'm going to get you out of here. You'll be safe and you'll be gone and we won't see each other again, basically.
And he also does give him some advice as well, in that he says, he kind of says there's no way that Ciri could have survived Tor Lara exploding. You should go and find Geralt first as well. And he says this because Radovid's kind of perception is that when Geralt finds out about Ciri potentially dying, at least as Radovid understands what happened with the explosion, then you need to find Geralt first, because otherwise Geralt's just going to tear the world apart.
Trying to find his daughter, you need to tell him that Ciri's gone before he tears apart the continent looking for her. Yeah.
And so, but that sends Jaskier on then to find Yennefer.
Exactly. Again, have a little bit of banter between the two of them. It's witch and bard, but they do have a nice moment where the two of them discuss what's happening, where they work out exactly where each of them stands. That she's able to tell Jaskier that Geralt has been taken to Brokilon Forest to be cured. That's where Triss had to take him to get healed after the battle with Vilgefortz. So that's how Jaskier knows where to find Geralt. She needs to stay behind and clean up what's left in Aretuza, really, and join with her the Brotherhood, what's left of the Brotherhood, to fix up the place effectively. So he's kind of tying those points together. He's telling her he's going off, and Jaskier shares with Yennefer that he thinks potentially Ciri's gone in that explosion because he's been told that by Prince Radovid. So. And then he heads off to go and meet up with Geralt out in Brokilon Forest with the dryads. A nice moment there where we see him using his bardly skills, trying to get in through to the forest. He sings the Enchanted Flower, and as they hear the song from him, they realise that he's the kind of person that they should actually be letting in there. And he finds that this is a place of refuge for everybody that's trying to hide from the war. We see Dara in there again, who's been a constant moving piece throughout the last 3 seasons of the show. He seems to appear everywhere in different locations with different groups of people. But again, these is a whole group of people that are all hiding out from this war between the northern kingdoms and Nilfgaard as well. So I kind of like the placement here of Jaskier going between all of these parties, gathering all of the information, and then kind of bringing it back to Geralt, who's been lying on his back now for a couple of days trying to get healed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jaskier's little song was really good, and it was very touching. And I just thought how the dryads reacted. You really sense that. And of course he does land the bombshell as well to Geralt that Ciri is not dead, but missing, because seemingly on his way to Brokilon Forest, he has picked up intel and rumours. As you would, being a bard, making your way across, from pub to pub across the continent, to get to the forest. But he says that, she is missing, and is on her, but has been captured, and she's on her way to Nilfgaard. Dun, dun, dun. And I kind of like that because, it just shows you how Jaskier is tuned in to the sort of the rumor mill, or the intelligence network effectively from his time saving elves, from the northern armies.
Exactly. But that was it. That was my main point from the episode. And, John, as we said, most of the episode taking place throughout your main point of Ciri in the desert. Any other notes? Anything else you wanted to call out about the episode?
The only note I have is we have the Witcher's version of the Sarlacc pit, effectively, with the gloopy looking oasis that Ciri is kind of hopeful will give her some fluids and water, and it ends up looking rather gloopy, and in the end is a creature lying in wait to trap prey who thinks exactly the same thing, which I kind of quite liked. Or maybe not Sarlacc pits, but the worms from Dune. So I liked that, and I also liked the rock monster as well. Because again, that was something that...
A little B-52s for you. Okay.
Exactly. A little bit of B-52s, always. But just because, you know, the rock monster does injure her only friend, Little Horse, that she has found on this journey, or at least in her mind, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that prompts her to take Falca's advice to use the fire magic in order to save the only thing that has been good about the desert, which is this companion that has helped her try and get out of the desert, or her subconscious.
Exactly. That's kind of what I like about the unicorn, because, you know, she even mentions when she meets the unicorn first time, Yennefer doesn't even believe you exist, you know?
Yeah.
That's the first thing she says, and then reaches out to try and stroke it, and it walks away from her, doesn't let Ciri touch it or ride its back or anything like that. It is a presence, this mythical creature, the presence throughout, leading her along.
Yeah.
So that almost made me question even more. Hang on a second, is any of this even happening? Is this all happening in her own head? You know, is that what it's for? Did love the gloop monster. I thought it was cool that we again see Ciri's amazing skills from her witchering coming out as she does her huge backflip to get away from that massive
cool.
sharp teeth. Very cool to see that. And again, it's not that it comes down to a choice of using fire magic or being a witcher at this point here. It's that we see both sides of her here in this moment on her own. We see her trying to use the fire magic to save Little Horse, and we see her escaping using her witcher moves, I suppose. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good stuff. Overall, John, what about the episode itself? What did you think of this episode?
I think after the second time of watching, I would give this 4 rock monsters out of 5. I think it's really necessary to see Ciri's perspective here. You know, and I think, you know, whilst on my first watching, I probably would have given this 3 or 3.5. It was just because it felt so slow, and I was expecting all the Jaskier stuff, really, and the panic and the urgency around Aretuza being destroyed, and I thought her being transported by the portal, we were going to see some kind of big coming together of her and Vilgefortz, like a confrontation.
Yeah.
And so it didn't play out like that. So I was kind of, you know, on initial watch of this episode, it was like, well, what's happening here? But in the end, it actually subverts all that, because it is about what's happening with Ciri. And I think, you know, these stories do need that when she is the central focus, but still it's as to whether it's playing out in reality or in her subconscious, and whether she's been, the only thing you can probably say is the monolith transported her to safety from the explosion. And again, the actual time and space of this is not really that clear.
Yeah.
So I think after my second time of watching, plus I think just our discussion here now, I would give this 4 rock monsters out of 5.
Missing a few notes there, but I know what you're talking about. Definitely, good old rock lobster from B-52s. I'm definitely with you on this. I think the expectation I had for this episode let me down when I watched the episode. But you know what they say about expectations, right? Again, having this discussion here about the point of the episode and the fact that it is from Ciri's perspective, which is really important in this show. She is a central character, and we tend to have her dragged here and there, trained to do this. This is your future. This is how you must live. All we ever hear is her pushing back on that and people pushing against her, but we don't get a moment with Ciri on her own to contemplate what's going on and contemplate the future leader she's going to be. So for that reason, the episode was really important. In the execution of the episode, following the last 2 really jam-packed episodes of the show where it is just her in the desert on her own, it felt like the pacing was completely off, and it felt like they could have had more of some of the other storylines in there to balance it out as an episode. But hey, look, there was one more episode to go in the season, and we needed to take this pause with Ciri, so I understand the choices. It's not my favourite episode of the series, but we don't judge episode by episode when we're looking at an entire season, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. Good stuff. We do have a little bit of feedback in for this episode. We did get an email in from Coffee and Vodka about episode 7 and 8, so I'm going to save that till the end of the next episode. But we did get a message over on Facebook from Dr. Bob Phillips.
Yes, Dr. Bob Phillips said, it's not very fair for Ciri to have gone through all the temptation and terrors of the wilderness, including the Saliva Oasis, loved that one, just to be dragged away by Nilfgaard. Mm-hmm. I have to admit, it was only at that point I realised we weren't in another realm. Or were we?
Or were we in our mind?
Or were we in our mind, exactly. Dr. Bob continues, I can see now how the regeneration of Geralt will be the triumphant exit for the mortally wounded Gruntsman, and I was touched, but still 20% doubting that Prince Radovid would give up his furs for the bard. Is it me, or is Jaskier becoming less annoying? Or is it just that, like a persistent toddler, my tolerance has grown? Well, Dr. Bob, I would say I think Jaskier is becoming certainly more mature.
Yes.
Like, I think his time serving the Elf Underground Railroad has probably made him more mature, but he still certainly has his moments.
He does. And I think we've always liked Jaskier a bit more than Dr. Bob has liked Jaskier.
He's more worldly now, and
Definitely.
I think you can see that in his handling of Prince Ratty as well.
Prince Radovid, yes, absolutely. And you're right, that is the kind of character, we saw him in the first season. He may have traveled the world, selling everything for a song, and sleeping with everything he met on the way. But now we are a few seasons in. He's experienced love really for the first time this season. So I think he should be growing on you. I think that's the point of the character. He should have been irritating to begin with and become more interesting as the seasons went on.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob.
If you want to get in contact with us and let us know your thoughts of any of the episodes of The Witcher, you can, of course, email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group. There's spoiler posts up on there where you can discuss your thoughts on the episodes as well. We're going to take a break before we go into the next episode of The Witcher, the final episode for Season 3, The Cost of Chaos. See you in a minute.
Bye.
You're useless, and he's truly useless. Neither of you is any good to that girl dead.
Every day that I spend here is another that Ciri is in danger. Just because you're hiding from the world doesn't mean that I have to.
And we're back with our final episode of Season 3 of The Witcher. Episode 8, The Cost of Chaos.
Yes.
Yeah. Of course, still based on the book series by Andrzej Sapkowski and the game series from CD Projekt Red with showrunner Lawrence Smith-Hissrich. And this episode, once again, directed by Bola Ogun, who directed episode 7. The episode was written by Mike Ostrowski and Troy Dangerfield. Mike is a co-executive producer on the show and wrote an episode in season 1 and 2, along with episode 1 of season 3.
Excellent stuff.
And Troy was a writer's assistant on The Witcher Blood Origin, and this is his first writing credit on the main Witcher show.
Good stuff. Good to see all that kind of promotion stuff within the writing team.
Yeah, I think it's become kind of more to light with the writer's strike going on and what they're fighting for in getting credits for shows and what a credit actually means to a writer. There's a whole writer's room that's been involved in these shows for since the beginning, since Lawrence Smith-Hissrich set up that writer's room back in season 1. So that path of promotion is really important to writers because that's how they get paid their money and that's how they get paid residuals for an episode airing, right? So good to see that they do stick by that, at least with The Witcher, for their shows and bring up people that were in the background or were working with the full team throughout the previous series.
Yeah, good stuff.
And John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the finale of The Witcher Season 3 and your synopsis?
Sure. Searching for Ciri, Yennefer and her fellow sorcerers raid Vilgefort's fortress at Vulpan. They only find the corpses of the kidnapped Aretuzian novices and work together to restore their bodies so they can receive a proper burial. At Vulpan, Tissaia is confronted by Philippa, who blames her for the tragic outcome of the Thanid Island coup because of her relationship with Vilgefortz. But Tissaia pushes back, blaming Philippa for siding with Redania. After they return to Aretuza, guilt-ridden and resigned, Tissaia takes her own life. In Redania, an angry and disappointed King Vizimir orders Dijkstra to murder Philippa as punishment for the failed coup. But Philippa orchestrates Vizimir's assassination instead, crowning Prince Radovid the new king before he can leave to help Jaskier. Yennefer travels to Brokilon and heals Geralt as best she can. As he recovers, he is joined by Jaskier and an archer Milva, and they leave Brokilon to follow the rumours about Ciri and save her from Emperor Emir and Nilfgaard. Meanwhile, Fringilla and Francesca also arrive at Nilfgaard, secretly plotting against Emir. But when Fringilla accidentally reveals the truth about Nilfgaard's part in the murder of Francesca's baby, Francesca leaves in anger, swearing revenge on her and Emperor Emir. In the Great Hall at Nilfgaard, Emir, flanked by a disfigured Vildefort, welcomes Ciri to the Nilfgaardian court. But little does he realise that who he thinks is Ciri is in fact Terran, one of the missing Aretuzian novices kidnapped by Vildefort and posing as Ciri. Elsewhere, in a tavern somewhere on the continent, the real Ciri is still held captive by the bounty hunters. But she and another captive called Kaylee are saved by a bandit group known as the Rats that Kaylee is a member of. They let her join them after she accepts their offer to fight her captor, killing him and making her first human kill. When the Rats ask her name, Ciri introduces herself as Falka.
An absolutely jam-packed finale.
It really is.
After we talked about episode 7, where mostly focused on Ciri in the desert and some surrounding elements with Jaskier, this episode absolutely packed full of things
Whizzing
to wrap up.
around the continent.
Yeah.
Redania, Nilfgaard, Aretuza, Vulpan, wherever Ciri is.
Aye, and Brokilon, of course. Brokilon.
Brokilon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where are we going to start with our big moments for the episode then, John? Where do you want to start?
Well, my big moment for this episode is the great welcome of Ciri, because two things, primarily. Well, maybe three, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Your big moment is 3 moments.
It is.
Okay.
It's Vildefort is alive.
Yes,
he's here. I love the disfigurement that he has on his face as a result of that explosion at Tor Lara. He's alive. He's survived. His sort of Machiavellian type plotting is still very much alive and well on the continent. And this is seen immediately by the fact that, you know, he is pulling off Terran, who we met before, as Ciri. He knows very well that that is not Ciri.
Yes.
But he is passing her off as Ciri to the Emperor Emir, who is, you know, hoodwinked in this moment as, you know, all the regalia of Nilfgaard is assembled in this great hall to welcome her. You know, his daughter and their savior, effectively, this powerful Ciri. I'm really pleased as well that Terran pops up again, because I kind of wondered what happened to her.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that, you know, the machinations, the experimentation that Vildefort was doing, has now, has come to fruition, that this part of his plan has come to fruition. You know, if he wasn't able to hold on to the real Ciri, in that explosion of Tor Lara, he is, you know, he's showing his flexibility here. Right, well, I will go ahead with this other plan. Maybe it was his plan all along. Who knows?
Maybe. I wonder if he thinks Ciri is dead in the explosion in Tor Lara.
He may do, yeah.
Is he thinking that she didn't get transported away, that she's dead? So he kind of goes, do you know what? I have a backup plan to bring back to Emir and kind of say, I did accomplish my goal here. This is your daughter, who you haven't met since she was a very young child. So I can use Terran to replace him.
Yeah, exactly.
And it also makes me wonder something that isn't confirmed in this episode. The last time we saw this character, Terran, she was left with Annika and Otto, Geralt's friends, to take care of her. So has Vilgefortz gone back and stolen Terran from the two of them?
Yeah, well,
potentially
exactly, yeah.
They may not have survived.
And, we saw him pushing Istrid through, his black portal. Has he sort of been going to him?
Yeah.
And all this kind of stuff, because he does hold information that Vilgefortz wouldn't have known about. I mean, the other side of this as well, because it is his daughter, I know she was very young. And, this is his older daughter that he's not seen for so long. But I just wondered whether Emir knew he was being lied to here by Vilgefortz, by parading Terran as Ciri here, because he is he seems a very clever emperor. He's got relatively good intel, I think, within this world. And I just wondered, I don't necessarily think he knows he's being lied to, but I just thought, that would be kind of interesting if he was knowingly parading her in front of Vilgefortz. It's just because Vilgefortz looked so smug here, even though half his face looked like it had melted off. And I have to say, that was great, seeing that disfigurement of Vilgefortz.
Well, absolutely. We didn't even know if he was alive.
Exactly. Where he's standing there with that acclaim in that hall has come at a price for him personally.
Exactly.
At least. So yeah, that was my big moment, because I just thought, okay, now we know, it links back to the previous episode. We now know that those bounty hunters, whilst they may have been talking about Emir, haven't got her to Nilfgaard yet, despite all the rumours circulating that Jaskier has picked up, that she has been captured by Nilfgaard and is going back there.
They were clearly about Terran.
They were clearly about Terran.
Yeah, which is really interesting. And again, Terran was able to pass herself off back in episode 2. She was able to pass herself off as Ciri. That was the big surprise. This doppelganger of Ciri, who believed that she was Ciri, was under the spell effectively. So I guess she's back under that spell again. Yeah. Back under it. She may think that she is Ciri. Right?
Exactly.
So it's a really interesting one to leave off on. Yeah,
she does.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one to leave the series off on, because we don't get much more of it. We have to wait till season 4, whenever that's going to come out, to find out how this is all connected. But an interesting way to leave off that story,
Exactly. I think the other side of it as well is, whilst we're in Nilfgaard, we do get to see Fringilla and Francesca arrive here as well. Whilst they're trying to plot their way against Emir, we do see him immediately offering Fringilla an imperial governorship of Centrea. So there's the carrot, but at the same time, then he requests in a threatening way to Francesca that, the Scoia'tael will still fight with his forces, or all the elves will die. So he's not the generous, passive protector and champion of elves like Francesca thinks. And, here is the stick. And the stick, the depth of that stick, the depth of Emir's scheming, is made even more apparent to Francesca when Fringilla reveals that it was Emir that ordered her to kill Francesca's baby, in order to keep her on his side. And, Fringilla knew and had lied to Francesca. And so, all of a sudden, Francesca realizes that this whole alliance with Emir is built on sand. It's not an equal partnership like maybe he's promised her. And she, is forthright in her anger and the revenge that she will extract, not just on Emir, but also on Fringilla for what she did. She was the executioner, and Emir gave the orders.
And she hid it from her the whole time as well.
Hid it from her. And this was part of the reason, I think, as well, just that whole sort of scheme from Emir. He plays the long game. I just suddenly felt would he be easily hoodwinked like that by Vilgefortz?
Interesting.
I just wondered. I think that's why I got that little sort of spark in my mind as to whether this was the true hoodwink that Vilgefortz thought he was doing to Emir.
Right.
Because in a sense, Fringilla had done that to him by escaping and surviving,
Yeah.
So I think Emir plays a long game here, is crafty as well, and Machiavellian as much as Vilgefortz, and I just wondered, is this, meeting his match a bit? As I say, I'm not entirely sure that's true, but it just kind of threw me into that space because of these scenes between Emir, Fringilla, and Francesca.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I kind of like the play from Vilgefortz here, though, because it is one of those ones where it's been out in the grapevine, girl with white blonde hair around this age group. If you find her, send her on to the king. And we haven't had a moment where, he's looked out and there's 100 girls with blonde hair sitting out there claiming to be his daughter. We haven't had those moments at all. So I kind of like the idea in this world where, we don't have television and we don't have, broadcast of the internet of pictures of what Ciri actually looks like, that somebody could be hoodwinked by somebody who looks similar, who has the memories of her and is pretending to be her. I kind of like that potentially Vilgefortz is able to hoodwink Emir here. Francesca was going to take up the offer if he agreed to her offer. They know they had the plan going in. They were going to turn it all on Emir, but it seems like Francesca was going to take it. She wants to leave the war and the fighting.
Yeah.
So if he was allowing the elves to settle in Zintrea, it feels like she was going to take that offer, but he only offers that only the elderly, the infirm, and children will be allowed to go there, and all the rest of the Scoia'tael will continue to fight as effectively the leading force that can die on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And they will fight until they do die, or else all of the elves will be wiped out, is the offer he gives. But it feels like Francesca was willing to step away from the battle if she was allowed to live there with all of her people.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again, considering, this is the battle of elves and humans and all the creatures on the continent, it feels interesting that she would have stepped away with her entire people.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Derek, what about yourself? What's your big moment?
I have to take Tissaia as my big moment from the episode, and her relationship with Philippa as we see it here. It was kind of alluded to a few episodes ago that the reason that they broke up as friends was because of the relationship that Tissaia had with Vilgefortz, the battle that Tissaia began that Philippa couldn't stand behind. And here we have the kind of outcome of all of that. Philippa was right, technically. You shouldn't have trusted, shouldn't have led with your heart, shouldn't have gone with Vilgefortz, shouldn't have allowed him to manipulate you. I do like that Tissaia pushes back as well, though, and says, well, hang on a second, you're aligned with Dijkstra and you're aligned with the Redanian king. You are as culpable in that massive battle as I am. Both of us trusted the wrong people. Did you do it for power in Redania, but both of them do come together, in order to bury the lost, recruits who were taken from Aretuza. We have them all working together
to disassemble them from the thing-like creature that Vilgefortz had created from their bodies.
Yeah, so they do work together for that moment, but again, they do split apart. As Tissaia goes back to Aretuza with the rest of the sorcerers, and they are making their plan for how to come back from this. Tissaia unfortunately decides that that's time. She can't do any more. She's done everything she can do and takes her own life.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting, isn't it? Because, there is that talk that Ciri is going to Nilfgaard, and, I think the weight, what's at stake here, between these sorcerers, as they're in Vulpan, if she sides with Nilfgaard, the whole continent shifts, it's a big, big deal. And, they go to his fort, Vilgefortz fort, or castle, to see whether Ciri is there.
Yeah.
And she's not. But also then when they're back in Aretuza, you have Tissaia that really is needing this pep talk from Yen. Don't let Vilgefortz make you forget who you are. You think it's kind of worked, but then you slowly realize as they're preparing this service for the dead half elf, half human girls and students that she's writing her letter to them.
Yeah, I love the letter that she's writing and the sentiment that comes before it, this explanation of what Tissaia had to do to get the seat at the table. She had to change women from their nature so that they could be seen as lesser by men, so that they could take their seat at the table. She had to make sure that women that were joining the Brotherhood could no longer have children. They could no longer be able to get pregnant. And because of that, they called her bold. They called her powerful and at the same level as the rest of them, because they were taking away this power that only women had. Yen asks her to be the mother that they need her to be now.
Yeah.
Now that they are the women that are left within this society, this group. And Tissaia explains in the letter then that magic is not a gift, it is a trade. She leaves the note and pays the price for what she has done with the magic that she's been given and her part in starting this war.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well that, there's an impetus there from this death as well, which Yen articulates, to the remaining, mages at Aretuza. We need to preserve the magic order and eliminate Vilgefortz. There's a clear enemy here now, and it is Vilgefortz.
Yeah.
And it is maintaining, some kind of brotherhood at Aretuza, and that magic order that used to exist.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that determination came from Yen with the death of her closest person at Aretuza and her mentor in Tissaia.
Absolutely. And someone who's effectively apologized in two different ways for her treatment of Yen since she first found her. We heard earlier on in the season when Yen is talking about her relationship with Ciri and Tissaia going, despite all odds, you have become a mother. And here she's taking responsibility for her doing that to all of the female mages coming into this group, that she takes responsibility for what she did. And that was the choice that they made her take to get her seat at the table in the Brotherhood as well. So I thought that was a really interesting side of an end to Tissaia's tale, as been told throughout the last 3 seasons. On the other side, Philippa returns to Redania.
Yes.
As well, with a new plan for the north. But we have Dijkstra arriving first, talking to the king, saying that Prince Radovid is missing, but they will find him. That's the plan. And the king saying, well, you haven't delivered on what you said you were going to deliver. You told me this battle was going to be easy won. You have the approach that will allow us to win this fight. Dijkstra backtracks and kind of says, well, this went wrong and that went wrong and this thing, but I'll sort it out for you. Don't worry. I'll find your brother no matter where he's hiding. We will find him wherever. And he is told that no matter what happens, someone will have to pay for their failure. Yeah,
I mean, I really liked how Dijkstra put it, actually. Our plan was sound, but luck wasn't on our side. The messenger that failed to get there, the bigger thing around Vilgefortz. But Vesemir is like, we need consequences, or how will the people look up to me?
Exactly.
Where is my brother? Is he could be dead in a ditch as far as I know. And so ultimately, as you say, we need consequences, and the scapegoat for this failure, as declared by Vesemir, is Philippa.
It's going to be Philippa, and Dijkstra has to be the one to kill her, effectively.
Exactly. So I loved how this was being set up, with Philippa returning to Redania, to the royal palace, and then how that rug was pulled from under your feet with what transpired.
Yeah, and the fact that she has Prince Radovid with her, who Dijkstra said he didn't know where Radovid was. So not only has Dijkstra been told that Philippa has to be the one to be punished for the failure, she's now turned up with exactly what he said he couldn't deliver either. So, so that's quite an interesting play in it. But how it plays out with Dijkstra and Philippa, and the knife, effectively, that Dijkstra is about to, you think, kill Philippa with, and then he turns it on himself, tries to sacrifice himself, tries to give himself up.
Yeah.
But again, Philippa's a couple of steps ahead.
I love that. I love what she said. She said, I always knew I could count on your loyalty. You know, that what we had was solid. And I think, you know, that makes perfect sense to me. Like, that's why I loved how this scene played out, because I've loved the two of them together, and you got the sense that there was a real team there working together. Yes, possibly slightly askew because Dijkstra was the main, you know, was the head of the intelligence.
Yeah.
But I love that she said, I always knew that I could count on your loyalty. And then what transpires from that as well. So I just loved how this kind of cascaded into, you know, the murder of Vizimir. Then after was going to be and was being set up as the murder of Philippa.
Yeah. And then twisted to be possibly the murder of Dijkstra, you know?
Yeah.
And we end off not losing either of them. We end off losing the king.
So pleased.
And long live King Radovid.
Exactly. And also Philippa's friend, you know, so she's killed the king and the queen in this season. Yeah. So I like the fact that it was her, Philippa's lover, that was doing this. Who's one of the courtiers, you know? So it was just really good. You see kind of Radovid, you know, not really being able to process what's just happened because, you know, the king is there dead and the crown has been taken out of the pool of blood to be placed on his head.
Yes. And the other thing is about that scene is Radovid has come back and is getting all of his furs sold so that he can bring his army back to meet Jaskier. And now he's become king of Redania.
Yeah.
Completely against his wishes. He had the conversation with the king saying, I found my true calling. I know what I want to do. I want to go and support the person that I've met, effectively, and gets the blessing of the king to leave, because he's never found a place for him properly in the court, never found him as a good prince, never found him as a good courtier. So he was about to leave. He was almost out, and they dragged him back in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Philippa's plans have gone as she predicted. Radovid's not so much.
And unfortunately, Jaskier's never going to know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Jaskier's never going to know that he was about to leave there and do exactly what he said, go back and support him. So it's an interesting setup for season 4, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so.
With this king on the throne who will definitely be less challenging to what Dijkstra and Philippa want to do.
Yeah,
but
who knows what love will do? That's what I mean. The flame that is there, his promise to Jaskier, you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know.
He may ease himself onto that throne and into that crown quite nicely.
He might. You never know. That's it from my point, really, about to say in Philippa. We probably have a couple of notes to mention because this is the final episode of the season, so a couple of things that were set up in this episode. And hey, the show's called The Witcher, and we haven't even talked about what happened with Geralt.
Well, that is true.
In this episode, Geralt being restored from the wounds that he got from Vilgeforce. They tried everything in Brokilon Forest. They've tried everything to try and cure him. Kind of like the banter between this new character Milva in this episode.
Really
and we saw a little bit of her last episode, but a bit of banter from her as she joins the group, and a bit of criticism of Geralt trying to push himself. I love that consistently. I think she ends almost every conversation with him, and you're dead. With that at the end of everything, showing that she is a very powerful fighter herself, and he's making mistakes that he wouldn't make if he was at full strength. Also an interesting little put down to Jaskier as well as to why Jaskier hangs around with Geralt. He wants to be there at the end so he can write a song about the end of The Witcher. And Jaskier's response is, well, I'll get at least 3 songs out of that. Which was really good as well.
Exactly.
But these three are going to join together and go off into the sunset, I guess, to try and find Ciri. You'd mentioned already about Yen being at Aretuza and them joining together to make sure that Vilgeforce won't get the chance to use Ciri as the source. So they're going to be going to Nilfgaard as well to stop this connection between Ciri and Emir and Vilgeforce. But that's where, as I said, Milva, Jaskier and Geralt are going. One thing that does happen in here, which I suppose is of big interest, Two things, really. Yen portals into Brokilon, and she's the one that cures Geralt, so they have a final moment together before they go off. But Geralt also brews up his own elixir, which is slightly different because he doesn't have the same ingredients that he would have had back in Kaer Morhen. So he is able to fight. You can see he's not at full strength, but has still got the kind of power that he would have had in the past. We know that, unfortunately, Henry Cavill isn't returning to the role of Geralt next season. We are going to have a new actor as the Witcher. And an interesting final line from Yennefer to Henry Cavill in this episode. Her final line to him says, "Tell me this isn't the last time I'm going to see you."
Yes.
Before he goes off. So it is the last time that these two actors are going to work together.
Yeah.
She will see the Witcher again. Is it going to be Geralt's shoddy elixir that he made from whatever ingredients were available in Brokilon Forest that is going to transform him into Liam Hemsworth next season? Is that the indication that we have here? Like they go on the road together, and he does get another hero moment where he saves people being abused by the soldiers at the border. So we do have another hero moment. He is out in the road. There's no particular indication that he's starting to transform. I did think they were going to do some form of transformation here, or we'd end the season with Henry Cavill still suffering.
I was kind of in the same kind of mind, to be honest. I assumed we would see the transformation start because I'm guessing maybe Liam Hemsworth wasn't quite available for that.
Yeah, he hasn't filmed yet.
You know, so I thought it might start. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I was sort of like, oh, we'll get him for a bit of season 4. But I expect, is it the elixir? Is it the magic that Yen needed to help him heal that could possibly interact with it, you know, so that it's both, or is it one or the other, you know, the elixir or the spell? But it was a really good moment because, I mean, it is in that moment where you really see that Yen and Geralt both need each other, both thrive off one another and mean so much to one another.
Absolutely.
So I really liked that moment for sure.
Absolutely. So I guess what's actually going to happen, because we were kind of speculating, was it going to be like a Doctor Who thing where there was a regeneration moment that would happen here? I guess what's going to happen is the way they used to do it in Neighbours, where he'll take a helmet off and it'll be Liam Hemsworth underneath and nobody will say a word about the fact that it's a completely different actor after 3 seasons of the show.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that Henry Cavill's going. We have said that throughout the season. He's played such a good Geralt. Obviously sidelined after his massive battle with Vilgefortz, but I do like they gave him another hero moment in this episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the only other note from me is we have the introduction of the Rats.
Definitely, yeah. We'll talk about this one.
This youthful band that save Ciri, who is being held captive. Well, kind of. They're there to actually save. Now, I called him Cayley here, but the reference is the King of Ebbing at the tavern from the bounty hunters. But he is another captive of these bounty hunters, saved. And it is the Rats that have come to save him, as he's one of their members, or knows them at least.
Yeah.
And this is where then Ciri is also freed as a result of them slashing their way through the band of bounty hunters, and they ask Ciri to sort of join with them, at least give that offer, but on the condition, you know, they want to see what she's like with a sword by asking her to, you know, take on the lead captor here, which she does and kills him. I mean, I love it where they're just watching her fight and her swordsmanship, and they're like going, she's playing with him, which she is, you know, and I kind of, you know, it's really interesting for all the magic and her being the source. In a sense, it is the Witcher's training of the swordsmanship that she prefers, and you know, it kind of harks back to her not really getting what Yennefer was saying, and being pretty rubbish in channeling the magic. So I kind of like this whole thing. Again, in this tavern, like, I haven't read the books, so, like, say, reference to the King of Ebbing or references to the rats and their background, I don't really know. Again, they're just in a tavern. There's no context. There's no talk about them being in Nilfgaard or, those areas of the continent. So I'm like going, where are we? Mm-hmm. When is it? I do think it is currently at the moment, but I like to think that possibly there's another bit of rug pulling going on from the writers here as well.
Well, potentially, but the other, big change here is that Ciri is on her own here. She is joining up with the rats, and she is calling herself Falca after the vision that she had in episode 7. She's introducing herself as Falca. The bounty hunters, or the group of marauders almost that were in the bar, were all meeting up with their two captures, this character Kayla and Ciri, and they're talking about how much money they're going to make off the back of selling them to whoever the prospective people looking for them are. So I don't know whether it was close to Nilfgaard or whether it was just we'll find the best price for these two prisoners that we have. I don't know a huge amount about the rats either. What I do know is there is speculation that there is a spin-off coming from Haley Hall, who was one of the writers on The Witcher. There has been discussions that potentially filming actually completed on the spin-off The Rats, which was filming this year under a different title, and filming finished before June, so before the actor strike and the writer strike. So that's all been completed apparently, and this would be the next show that we'd see before we see season 4 of The Witcher. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Will we see Freya Allan as Ciri in that show, The Rats, where she's working with them, or will it be a prequel as to how Kaylee got to that point in the bar, and it's 6 episodes leading up to all their adventures and how they got and how he got captured and how they got there. Will it be something like that? So we'll see how that comes out. No official confirmation from Netflix that the show is even coming, from what I've seen, but all speculation at the moment that this is the spin-off that we'll see from this season of The Witcher.
Oh, excellent stuff.
It would be nice if they're going to do the next spin-off. It would be nice if it ties in a bit more. Blood Origin was kind of a spiritual long prequel, thousands of years before The Witcher, and didn't have the kind of connections that you'd expect to have. You would have expected that a character like Falca, who's introduced in this series and as the guiding star for Ciri basically in those conversations, that would have been the character from Blood Origin.
Yeah.
But for some reason there's no connection there with Blood Origin. That's the way you should have tied in the two of them. But I guess the poor reception of the show and lower viewership than The Witcher, they probably thought will disentangle those two from each other. But hopefully now, if there is the spin-off The Rats, we will see Freya Allan over there playing the role of Ciri for an episode or two. That'd be kind of cool.
I think so. Yeah. Excellent stuff.
Last note, should be mentioned because it was quite heavily focused on. When Geralt is crossing the border and has to pay his toll to cross the border, he hands over the medallion.
Yes.
To the crossing guard.
I know.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
It was. So we saw some flashbacks to the first couple of seasons of the show and The Witcher's time, I suppose, here. That was the only nod to the fact, really, that we won't be seeing Henry Cavill in the future. There were flashbacks to some previous moments. But this is kind of a big thing for the character to hand over this medallion.
Yeah. And he keeps one of the guards alive so he can tell the tale of what happened here.
Tell Nilfgaard I'm coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
But that's it. That's it for my notes for the episode. Nothing else from you either, John, I think?
Nope, nothing from me.
So overall, what did you think of this as a finale for season 3?
I really liked it. I'd give it 4.5 changing of the guard out of 5.
Nice.
I just thought it really kind of just pulled everything together from this season. And it navigated around the continent really well. I love just getting that last bit with Ciri and being introduced to the rats. So I really hope that there's a spin-off here ready to go, to be honest, or at least in the works, because
it'd be cool if that was our winter Witcher show.
And I felt like they kind of all gelled there immediately. You know, a really good introduction to this group. I loved the, you know, Call Me Falca, you know, real resonance from the previous episode. Milva, I really enjoyed her. I'm so glad she's joined Geralt and Jaskier as they head for Ciri. It was a real nice addition there. Loved what went on in Redania. Just because I really enjoy that part of this universe.
Absolutely.
I loved the fact we got to see Vilgefortz there. He's alive. He's still sort of, you know, plotting away and planning. And also just, you know, the deepness at the loss of Tissaia, how important she was for Yennefer and how, you know, that spurs them to sort of take up the baton to preserve the magic order and to destroy Vilgefortz.
Exactly.
For what's happened. And to not only the Brotherhood as a whole, but for Yennefer because of Tissaia, because of that personal connection between Vilgefortz and Tissaia, but also all the people that have been lost in their relationships, you know, and the loved ones or their mentors who have died from that battle. So really, really liked it. Give it 4.5, changing of the guard out of 5. Derek, what about yourself?
Yeah, I thought this was a good finale to the season. In fact, I think a lot of the episodes this season have been really, really good. There's only been one that I had a problem with, and that was episode 2, which tried to do what this episode was doing, but just didn't get it right. They didn't have enough time spent with each of the characters. But this finale worked so well because we had massive character moments like Tissaia. We had massive moments between other characters that we haven't seen interact together. You know, Francesca and Fringilla and Amir interacting together. Francesca finding out about the death of her child. You know, they're massive moments held in here in this episode. While Geralt and Yen were a bit in the background, and Jaskier were a bit in the background, they have been at the foreground for 3 seasons. So giving them a bit of the background so that we can set up this wider world, what's going to happen coming up in season 4, felt like the right decision for this final episode. I think it landed high, for me. And I'm glad they were able to get the balance right in this episode of touching on everything that's going on across the continent and all these characters that we've seen on this big multi-character show, and giving them all their own time to breathe and giving some good context around what was happening. I think it worked really well for me this episode, definitely.
Definitely.
So a good way to end the season. I am looking forward to a 4th season of the show whenever that comes, and whenever everybody gets together and starts paying their writers and actors and everybody involved in the show what they deserve for delivering quality entertainment content. I'm hoping it won't take too long for them to settle their disagreements at the moment and their ridiculous position on not paying people what they actually deserve for their work.
Good stuff. Yes, we have some feedback for episode 8. Derek, take us away.
Yeah, first up, we got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who was talking about episodes 7 and 8, so we held it for this one on both 7 and 8. He says, "Greetings, fellow desert-dwelling defenders. The temptations of Ciri, or Ciri's trial by fire, and for a bit, she even had herself a unicorn friend. The mending of Geralt, or Geralt's new band, and yet another mission of similar theme: save the princess, save the world. Together, these season-ending episodes give a very clear message. It's never good for Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri to split up. The performances, direction, and writing were great, thoroughly drawing me in and leaving me anxious for next season, if there's to be one. Milva is a great addition to the troupe, definitely a shot in the arm of an already healthy show. Again, based on the other strengths of the programme, it doesn't look like replacing the main character is as scary a move as one might have thought, although it would be nice to see Sir Cavill return. Any ideas on what's going on with Ciri 2.0? One of the LMDs they took, perhaps, or something else? Look forward to hearing your thoughts. 4.5 crabby stabby crags, greedy border guard guts, serious series of series, and roach references out of 5. peace and take care. Coffee and vodka. Oh, lots of tongue twisters for me there. Coffee and vodka. Good stuff. Glad you really enjoyed these last couple episodes. On some of the questions there is going to be a season 4 that's already been confirmed. Liam Hemsworth, as we said, is coming in to take over the role of Henry Cavill. So definitely going to be a season 4 of the show. And I believe they've said season 4 and 5 at this stage is the plan. Hopefully the spin-off of the Rats is coming as well. On Ciri 2.0, yeah, that's Terran. We saw her earlier on in the season. She was one of the recruits that was taken by Villager Forts from Aretuza, so she's back there. And yeah, we're speculating that she doesn't know any better, that she thinks that she's Ciri, like she did when Geralt first met her.
Yeah, I totally agree as well with you around the addition of Milva. Really enjoyed that character in this episode.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you get a little bit of her backstory from Eithné, the leader of the Brokilon tribe, that she has taken her in, has forgiven her past sins, whatever they are. We'll probably learn about that as we go through her in season 4. But you know, she has got the heart of gold, but she's got a really hard exterior again. Another general character trait for lots of characters in The Witcher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Good stuff. Thanks very much, Coffee and Vodka.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka.
Over on our Facebook group, Parthenia Locklear says, I needed more. I feel like this season was dragged out and didn't give me all that I was waiting for. I'm interested in seeing how Ciri's character develops even more, but I've equally enjoyed it and have been disappointed at the same time. Thanks, Parthenia. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. I've really enjoyed this season, to be honest. I think it's probably, I don't know, I feel as though they have been more high level this season, and I think that is to develop and move on the whole thing of what's happening on the continent.
That wider story,
and the wider story, exactly. I mean, so I can see, you know, I think, you know, episode 7 there on Ciri's character, I thought was really good in the end around it developing, as well as seeing her trying to develop her magic with Yennefer and so on. But I think I just wonder whether they pulled out a bit to sort of look at that wider story here, and maybe, you know, that affected things.
Yeah, potentially. It certainly did in episode 2. I think that's the one that kind of calls out to me when they tried to do everything very wide without setting it up as well as they have in these later episodes. That's my only real down episode for the season, but overall I think it hung together quite well, and definitely looking forward to seeing more of Ciri now that she has kind of set her own mind as to where she wants to go while she is still in hiding with this group of the Rats. I think having her off on her own is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much, Parthenia.
Yep, thanks, Parthenia.
Also on Facebook, Dr. Bob Phillips says, the finale did an excellent job of setting up the new fronts in the war across the continent. The Sisterhood is now a handful of cold vengeance. Redania has a new king at the moment, but the power hasn't changed. After all, Prince Radovid had all but declared undying love for Bardi Boy. Emperor Emir is dead by his own people. The elves, Geralt, all the rest of the continent.
Interesting.
Ciri will need to realize the slaying of monsters sometimes means the steel sword is necessary as the silver, and there's a new tremendous trio set on saving the world. An extra note, the white hair and crush the patriarchy from within were not things I expected from Tissaia, but a beautiful bow on her life which tied together her complexity. Extra note, are we going to find that counterfeit potion, like counterfeit medicines, can have unexpected side effects, like developing a whole new body? Well, that's what we're postulating at the moment, is that maybe the counterfeit elixir will sort of somehow morph Geralt's face into a younger Australian brother of Thor the Avenger.
Yes. Maybe next time he takes it, suddenly his face will start to melt into a different look completely.
Yes, I do like we have a sisterhood of cold vengeance, as you say. And interesting take there around Emperor Emir as well. Yes. You know, that it is in effect, you know, he's poisoned the whole continent, whether it's from Francesca and Fringilla, but also Geralt And Ciri certainly have no time for him. The mages and sorcerers don't have any time for him. So
don't count out Cahir. Last time we saw Cahir, he was going to protect Ciri.
Yeah,
so.
and Cahir as well. Yeah. So, yeah, who knows?
Definitely some interesting stuff to build on for next season, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob. And thank you, fellow Witchers, as well, for joining us on our coverage of The Witcher Season 3. Yeah. It has been great getting everyone's thoughts through over on our feedback, but also it's been great chatting about this with our fellow Witchers.
Absolutely, yeah, been really good fun talking about this season.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
There's only one thing I haven't mentioned. I know we're way beyond notes and way beyond discussing the episode, but one thing I haven't mentioned is we saw Dara in this episode.
Yes.
Talking about his relationship with Ciri, talking about the fact that he always felt safe with her. And what I really liked was he says he wants to forgive Ciri and says to apologize to her for what he did to her as well. So I just thought I should mention it because Dara has been one of those characters that's been around the whole time, and it feels like he's a character that in the books is really important. Yeah. So they need to reference that he's around and that he's involved and that he's
I hope
in
they
the background.
hook up again like they did in the first season.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, but I just wanted to mention it. I don't want to go past our final episode and not mention that Dara was there and had that moment, because I feel like there is going to come a point in the future where potentially he and Ciri are sitting on the thrones and we haven't mentioned him for a whole season, you know? So I did want to mention that before we close out our episode. But thanks so much once again for joining us for our discussion for The Witcher. We hope you come back to us when we talk about season 4, or of course, as we mentioned, if The Rats comes out, we'll cover that here on our Witcher feed or on TV Podcast Industries as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, fellow Witchers. Remember, you can support us through patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, and of course, you can support us by staying subscribed to the podcast. And of course, if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends? Because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love. Yes. And of course, we have Good Omens going on at the moment. We've just recently finished Secret Invasion, and coming up over the next few weeks, we will have Star Wars Ahsoka towards the end of August,
28th of August,
the start of The Wheel of Time as well in September.
A bit more fantasy for you fantasy fans. Yeah, we're going to be going to Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time Season 2. Looking forward to that kicking off on the 1st of September. I think they're releasing 3 episodes again for this second season, like they did with the first one. So lots to dig our teeth into as we get into autumn.
Yes, we will hopefully be back sometime very soon on the continent. So we hope you join us for that whenever that is released on Netflix. But remember, in the meantime, keep watching, keep listening, and keep witching.
Bye.
Bye.